Welcome to another episode of the Portsmouth Basketball Podcast. We're back again.
We're back.
We
Hello.
are back. I'm your host, Mark.
And I am Paul. Hello.
We've got another guest, and it's a big one.
Mark, it does not get bigger than this guest. The questions that you've been asking me for so many episodes now, and I've been saying to you, that's a Dan question. That's a question for Dan. Well, we have got Dan on the show, and you can ask all those questions. So without any further ado, here now, stand and cheer for your Portsmouth Force head coach, Daniel Fatomide.
Thank you.
We got a head coach here, Mark.
Yeah, there's lots of questions to ask.
How you doing, Dan? You okay?
I'm doing all right. Thank you guys for calling me onto this.
Well, you know, this is a pinnacle. I think this is one of the highlights of the season. I think
Any great organisation, it all starts from the top. So it's only right that you're in that conversation.
There's a lot of people at the top, but I appreciate that.
And you know what? Just starting with the Portsmouth Force, one of the things that I really loved about Dan as the head coach, and one of the things that have been really apparent, was the amount of respect I think that Dan brought in and instilled into the team and into the club. So, for example, you came in, and I've said this on a few, hello, sir, how you doing? I'm like, you call me Paul, that's fine. But then all of a sudden, the entire men's team are calling me sir. Then that goes down under 18s, under 16s, and I do an under 12, covering under 12 National League, and I walk in and a player comes up, hello, sir, how you doing? That level of respect that's gone all the way through the club came from Dan.
Yep, 100%.
I try not to take too much of the credit.
Is that something that you know, have tried to instill, like, proactively, or is that just something that happened naturally? Is that just, you know, a trait from you?
I think a big part of it is definitely my upbringing. Nigerian, loud and proud. My parents were big on that. But then also in my earlier basketball career, my earlier coaches, they also recognized that not everyone was going to be a professional basketball player. So it was also, okay, what life skills can we give to people to help them in their career and whatnot? So I'm just trying to emulate them and to give the kids life skills that they can use, really.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. So, like, with players now, will you, I mean, just say it straight to the players. If you think, you know, they're doing something wrong, you'll just say, look, this is what you're doing wrong. If you think, look, you know, your basketball might not be a career for you, are you straight with the players like that?
Yeah, definitely. When I was coaching I think we're going to get onto it, but when I was coaching the under 14s, there'll be sometimes we're doing certain things and we're talking about working hard or trying your best. It's the same thing over the way how you want to be a better basketball player right now. You also want to be the best in your job so you can get promoted, so you can get higher paying roles and whatnot. So it's just trying to help them see the parallel between some really key skills that they can use in basketball that can also help them in life outside of basketball.
Wow. There you go. Mark, this is the head coach here.
Yeah, you've just gone running into it, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
Well, Dan, let's take everyone back to, you know, the start of, you know, where you found your love for basketball. And, you know, I believe it was in NASA in London. That's where you started your playing days.
Yes. Back when I was in primary school, they had some of their coaches that came into our schools to lead the PE lessons, other bits and pieces like that. So I basically got picked up as one of the taller guys in the year, and I was okay. I got invited to a tournament, played pretty well in the tournament, and then from there they were like, you should come along to our club. And at that point, they were one of the best clubs in London and in the country. So that was a bit like, oh, cool, I'll come along then. And it was fun. So, yeah.
I guess the experience you're getting at that level, because from what I remember you saying, you were 10 years old playing National League in the under 12s.
Yeah, they threw me straight in at the deep end. We had a really good core of my year. that were good enough to play in the years above. So we had a couple of years at under 12 National League before we then kicked on with our own accomplishments year on year, really.
And I guess even though it's throwing yourself in the deep end, that's actually pretty good, because that, you know, even though it's tough at that start, that's just making you stronger in the future.
Definitely. It made you think quicker, think a lot more. Like, you had to work harder, and you knew that if you were to get onto the court, at that point, no one's really paying attention to how old you are. We're on the court together, so that means I have the same expectations of you as I do of someone 2 years older than you.
Yeah, and you know what? It reminds me of a Portsmouth Force player last season, which was Zion Lawson. You know, so he was still definitely eligible for the under 18s. Was he 15 playing for? So he was an under 16 National League player, Mark.
Yeah.
Playing for men's national basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, the experience he is getting from that, you know, he's playing with men, you know. Have you heard from Zion? How's he doing?
Yes, Zion's doing very well. He's just recovering, in the process of recovering from an injury. But the most exciting thing is the fact that he is going to be heading to Charnwood College up in Leicester in September to play at their academy. And that's a great place for basketball players to develop, take those next steps, continue playing in seniors. So yeah, it's really good with everything that he was able to pick up from this year. Well, the season just gone. It would have been tough for him, and it was tough for him, because there were some people there that were 10 years older than him, but there were loads of things that he was able to learn, and we're hoping that he'll be able to carry with him to Charnwood College and really continue to blossom.
So let me just jump on that. In terms of those sort of academies and colleges that are really good feeders, how many of those around the country are there?
That is a great question.
You know what? I read an article the
other day.
It's not
just a pretty face, Dan. Come on now.
That's a throw under the bus question. He does this a lot.
Yeah.
I read an article the other day that said there were 14
Look at you doing your
feeder
homework.
clubs that BE recommend as far as that, and the Solent Kestrels was one of them.
That sounds about right, because you've got the EABL, which is the Elite Academy Basketball League. Then you've got the division, you could say, below, which is the CBL and the CBL Tier 2. So going off of what Paul said, so there would be maybe like 14 of the top academies in the country to go to.
And you know what? The thing that bothered me a little bit about that article was...
I mentioned Kestrels.
Yeah, other than that. But it was the fact that I read it and just went, oh, right, okay, so that potentially creates bias in that area for those clubs. And obviously I highlighted it in my mind, because I thought, oh, right, Kestrels, they're being fed really good players. And I was, you know, I'm always biased for Portsmouth. Yep. So I was thinking, hang on, how do we get those players that are being fed over there?
Well, I think as we just had a recent interview with Alex, for example, was a perfect example.
He came to Portsmouth Force.
He came to the Force.
It's a better club. Is that what he said?
I'll leave you hanging on that one. But the way he put it was that there's the infrastructure. That's what they have set up. You know, that's the draw. We're going to go play Itchner, and we're going to go play down that way. And there's the draw, and it was all lined up. So I guess the question is that what we're ultimately trying to emulate in Portsmouth?
I think we are definitely on that correct road.
Yeah.
Because moving into this incoming season, we're going to have kids who are 3, 4, 5, 6 years old playing basketball. Yeah. And on the boys' side, we've got under 12s all the way straight through to under 18s and our men's team. And it's going to be the first year where we're going to have an under 14 girls national league team as well. So we're definitely on our way to get into that stage.
And even at that stage that you're at there, 10 playing in the under 12s, you could see a trajectory. You could see where the end post was, like, oh, okay, that's what we wanted to aspire to.
Yeah.
How important is that, and having that ladder for basketball in particular as a sport?
I think because basketball's not as mainstream as football is, for example.
Yep.
So you won't really see, like, for example, so my brother supports Manchester City, and you've got
someone has to.
You've got a Phil Foden, for example, who when he was at the under 10s for City, he could see that, oh yeah, I can get through to the City first team, and I can see the first team on the TV. Whereas for kids, when they're playing basketball, you don't really get that. It's happening a little bit more now with the BBL on Sky Sports and having their own streaming service. But I think for, especially this year, we're going to have some under 12 kids who are going to be playing in the same basketball kit as the under 14s, 16s, 18s, and then the men's team who are going to have 300-400 people in the stands. So being able to see that, if I work hard, I can get there. I think that's great for kids.
And those kids 100% coming to the men's game, watching those men's game, going, I want to be playing here one day. 100% they're doing that.
So what inspired you at that age of 10 to want to play basketball?
If I'm being completely honest, I enjoyed it and I was good at it. So it was pretty easy for me to be like, okay, let me continue to ride this wave. And I enjoyed the hard work. Like, I enjoyed being pushed and then being able to come to a achievement of, okay, so I'm really trying to work on my left hand here. I can't score left hand layup, but 3 months down the line, I can score left hand layup, dribbling my left hand, doing everything with my left hand, crossing over my left hand. It's like, yes, I've accomplished something. So that's what kept me going.
And you did accomplish something in those really early days. You know, you had Final Fours and finals that you were going to, and you know, you progressed with one championship there before you went to Essex, right?
Yeah. Final Four is definitely an experience. And there's those experiences with those players, with those coaches. Those are experiences that I'll never forget. I'm in contact with one or two of them still now, but it's very much a experience and skills that you can't teach people until they've gone through themselves. And all I try and do is, with the experiences I had, is how can I try and feed this into the players. So if and when Portsmouth Force finally do get a team that are going to
When that
are going to the junior Final Fours in Manchester, I can give them the little nuggets that they need. So instead of what usually happens, people being starstruck with the fans, the crowd, the lighting for the whole first half, they now only have to worry about it for the first quarter, and then they can really get down to business.
I mean, the fans, the crowd, the lighting, that's just a normal Force game these days, isn't it?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
How important is an atmosphere?
Huge. Like, definitely huge. I think when it first started, a lot of the guys were a little bit nervous. And even me, to start off with, I was like, wow, there's like 300-400 people behind you down, you're like, shy watching the game. So that's a bit like, oh, okay. But then eventually you get used to it. And when you've got the crowd that are screaming and shouting when you're scoring or when the team's playing well, it's like, oh, this is good support. But then when you know your team's not playing very well and the crowd's quite quiet, it reminds you that this game that you're coaching or this game that you're playing is bigger than just yourself. It's bigger than just 12, 15 guys and a couple of coaches. This is a whole city here that's supporting you.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? The one thing, and you know what? I'm saying this, you know, from a fan now, and I'm speaking on behalf of everyone who comes to the games. We're all just watching it, wanting you and the team to do well. And when that starts happening, it's just great to be there, isn't it?
That's a great vibe. It's a great vibe. And you can, when the crowd are putting something into it and then the play's going the right way, then that infuses the crowd, which then infuses the players, and you can see that flow, and everyone's just enjoying that experience of what's going on, except the team you're playing against, obviously. But
and we have, and where we are, we have that really unique view.
Yep.
Where when
I
something
don't. I sit
happens,
next to you, so that is definitely a unique view.
We get to see when something happens, we're facing you, all the players, and the crowd behind you. So we get that real unique view where we just see the play, the reaction, all in one glance. And I think if I wasn't doing the announcing and the music and stuff, I think I would sit on the side that we're at, where there's just one row of chairs to get that experience.
Yeah. Someone say VIP.
I think that is a VIP. You know what? I did consider the other day, they could put a row of seats behind, in front of the bleachers, but behind the players, like literally, and say these are floor seats, and you're right behind the players. That would give you an extra 40, 50 seats, people to sit down.
Probably,
yeah. I mean, I know they're doing the corners this year, so they're going to pack it out a bit more there. And Dan, I don't know if you heard, but Paul has actually committed that once he wins the Euro Millions, he's actually going to build a stadium that's a 3,000 seater, dedicated with no badminton courts.
No,
that's the stipulation. There's
and
no other lines, just a court.
I'm going to be controversial here, Mark.
What size court
All
would it be? We haven't
badminton
actually
players
said that.
are not allowed in the building.
Oh,
Wow,
that's a big job.
that's what? Because Dan
Look,
actually mentioned about
Everyone's
different court
irritated
sizes.
by badminton lines.
Because there are different court sizes. So are there other, is there, I won't say not a regulation size court, I know that's a joke, but is there, if you're playing in the league, you have to stay within a certain boundary, that court size?
Yes, this is where I'm showing my knowledge or lack thereof. But there, you do find when you go to some courts that they are a little bit, either a little bit shorter,
Yeah.
or the space between the side and the 3.9 line is a little bit smaller.
Okay.
So there are certain regulations that need to be met for the courts to be like valid for any National League games, at least senior games. And then I think there's extra regulations and stipulations for it to be good enough to be used for FIBA regulated games.
Yeah.
So there are some in there.
Because I know we said about, for example, I think by the end of the season, capacity is going to be the issue more than anything else.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love it if it was.
And the only place we could think of at the moment is Mountbatten, that has bleachers both sides that can come out. But I mean, that floor is unforgiving.
Well, actually, you say that they have just changed the floor. I was there recently. They've changed the floor, so it is a little bit.
I mean, I was there yesterday, but I was swimming, so that's not
Yeah, it's
no purpose of adding in the
it's not an
conversation.
amazing floor, but it's better than
Better than
literally
the one-
concrete, shiny concrete, which is what it was.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, you fell down and
You hurt your
you
ego,
hurt.
then you hurt your leg.
you know what? I don't know why this just popped in my mind, but I remember playing a National League game there, and we had a guy called Craig Teasdale, one of the founders of the Kestrels, and you know he went to shoot, and a defender, you know, absolutely got sold it, jumped in the air. Craig went around, and this guy's knee brushed his. That's how high up this guy was. This guy's knee brushed his shoulder, and he came down on this court, and you could see his hands were coming down to stop. So he was coming like head first. Hands were trying to stop, and for some reason, just as he went to get the floor, his hands kind of came back, and his like face straight on the Mountbatten floor, right in front of the bench. I was obviously sat on the bench, and literally. He pulled his hands away from his mouth, and his two front teeth fell out. And it was like, oh my God.
Oh, there's your passport photo.
That is that is the Mountbatten court floor.
Yeah, that is awful. What's the best court you've ever played or coached with?
I think that would definitely have to be the National Basketball Performance Centre in Manchester.
Yeah.
Yeah. Newcastle Eagles, their court up there as well is also pristine, but I was working as an analyst. But the court that I've coached on, definitely the main performance centre in Manchester.
Is it as springy as like an NBA court? Because I was surprised first time I went on one how much give there is on those courts.
Now, I wouldn't know because I haven't been exposed to an NBA court, but I would like to believe it's close because they've held some FIBA regulated games there as well.
It's just got that little bit of give, and you think, oh, I've got a little bit of, hello.
Yeah.
No, it's always interesting. The court, it's all. I won't say they're all the little things, but if you've got a court that's messy, if you've got a court that's busy, if the rings are a certain way, I know they're all incremental, but when people train on a certain court or a certain type of court, and then they have an away game, it could be, I won't say completely different, but there could be enough difference to think, oh, hang on a minute, this feels wrong. There's more spring in this, or there's, I don't know, different types of backboard, or who knows. We've got this great conversation for anyone listening now between Dan and Paul when they're writing to each other. I don't know, some sort of love note here going on.
You know what? I'm just getting some extra stats.
What does it say? How do you shut Mark up?
You get some
you
extra
can't,
stats
sorry.
from Dan. I just had a question for him, and I didn't want to interrupt you. So Dan, going back then, you know, obviously you had that National League experience, and then you ended up moving to Essex, and you know, carrying on playing your National League game with is it Thurrock
Hornets.
Thurrock Hornets, and then also you had your experience you know, in the London regionals and you know, in the counties, and that led all the way up to university.
Yes. So when we moved to Essex, I carried on playing under-18 National League, which was fun, but no Final Fours, unfortunately. And then I had some exposure playing county level basketball in Essex. Just before we moved to Essex, I also got selected for a London regional team. So that was fun, because that was a very high level with some of the guys who I used to play with then are now professional basketball players. So just to say that I was able to play with them was also a bit of fun. And then when I finished there, came down to the University of Portsmouth, where I played for 2 out of my 3 years, coached the team my final year.
And this is, you know, this is what I heard and thought was like a really interesting story, because it reminded me of a story I'd heard at Mickey Burns' funeral, where he was playing, and for whatever reason in a game he ended up coaching, and then all of a sudden it was really evident that he was actually better coaching than than what he was contributing on the team, and he just became a coach. So you got injured at university, and that's where you started to discover, hang on, I'm all right at coaching here.
Yeah. So my first ever exposure to coaching was when I was with Thurrock Hornets. I used to turn up to my sessions early, and there was a younger age group before us, so I used to help out with that coaching session. But when it actually came to me coaching a team myself, it was from university. So my second year, as basketball players do, I rolled my ankle, but it was quite a bad one, so I was out for a couple of months. And then after that, the season was basically done, and because people knew I was doing some kind of coaching, they asked me whether I wanted to coach the team in my final year, and I was like, why not? It's a good experience, and I enjoyed it. I realized I was okay at it, and we did pretty well. So I thought maybe this is something that I can roll with.
So how old were you doing that then, Dan?
So I was 20, 21.
Damn. That's young to be coaching.
Oh yeah, very.
Yeah, I mean, you know, got to take hat off to you for that. I mean, that's to step into that and say, yeah, I'll take that on.
Well, it's has similarities between a bit like what we were saying with Zion, getting that experience early. So Dan was getting that coaching experience early. You know, just touching on something you said, I thought is a really interesting question. And I'm just curious how you deal with it as a coach. So ankle injuries are, you know, we all basketball players get them.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's sometimes the mental injury that takes longer to heal than the physical injury. So any basketball player listening to this will know, you roll your ankle, you know, you're out for anything between 6 weeks, maybe 3 months if it's really, really bad. But then you come back to the game and you're driving into the hole, and all of a sudden your brain is saying, stop. And you're looking, sometimes you're going up for a shot and you're looking down at your feet where you're landing. As a coach, how do you try to help players with that?
It's interesting you say that, because we had that experience with a player this year just gone, where they'd previously had quite a big injury, and when they were coming back into it, they weren't too sure. Like, they were stopping themselves from going full pelt to the rim and whatnot. And it was just a thing of encouragement and putting them in situations where we could build it up. So maybe we'd do some finishing stuff with a pad, and then we might progress to finishing stuff with a stationary defender before we went to finishing stuff with a passive defender, before it then got to a thing of, okay, we're now playing proper one-on-one, and you can only go to the rim and finish for that specific individual. So I think it's just slowly building up their confidence in that area, because most of the time the mental thing is the toughest part to get past. But once he was able to get past that, he was back to his old self where he was,
we saw it. We saw it, and at the start of the season, if you go back to the episode where we spoke to Alex Grant, we were talking about Zach Riabi, you know, where he I think he was at wrist or something like that. But at the start of the season, that's when we found out about it, because we were watching him drive and he was hesitant. And I remember saying to you, I bet he's been injured. He's something's mentally stopping him here. And that's when I think he told us about it. And but by the end of the season, there was a few times where we were like, "No, he's going. This is it." It was great. No, I think that's really interesting there to get your perspective on that, because I think that's significant for players sometimes. So I mean, that was a great introduction to your playing career up to the point where you've gone, I could be a damn good coach here. So, and you've been getting that encouragement. And I love what comes next in your career. At university, I was a mathematician as well. And you know how vital statistics are in everything. I think the famous Isaiah Thomas quote was, "The numbers never lie." I love that. I use it all the time, that one. So from university, you were really getting into your statistical analysis of stuff, and that's where your career started going, into the analysis of basketball.
Yeah, so at university, I studied sports and exercise science, and within that, there was some coaching modules, but there were also some biomechanics modules, and I thought the concept of performance analysis was a nice overlap between the two. And I went on to go and do my master's in sports performance analysis, and that's where I really got to grips with it's more than just video and stats. It's trying to connect the why. That a lot of the time the stats will tell you what happened, but the supporting video will give you the additional and added context, or the video and the numbers might support the coach's thoughts on a player or thoughts on a certain set play working or not, or it might disprove it, or it might give the player some extra added confidence if they think they're a shooter but they're in a shooting slump, and you can put the numbers across to them that actually your percentages are still the same, just a little bit off, or you show them the video of actually all the shots that you're taking are the normal ones you are taking, but there's a slight tweak in your form that is coming because you're compensating from an injury you've just come back from, for example. So it was really interesting for me to see things from that side of things, and it also was able to get me onto some coaching stuff without having to be a super duper experienced coach.
Hey, whatever angle you can get.
Can you overanalyze?
Oh yeah, 100%. There is a fine balance. I'm never one to be like, okay, so the numbers say this and this is what it is. It's the numbers say this, okay. What does the video say? Does the video match up? Okay. When we're in play, how does it think? How does it feel? Do we agree with it? Because sometimes you can look at the numbers and actually be like, okay, although the numbers say this, I still think this and I'm going to roll with this. Like it's happened where I've shown a coach that these are the stats for so and so. Like there was this one when I was at Reading, which is where I was doing my masters. There was one kid where his numbers were saying that he was a really good mid-range shooter. But our coach was big on, okay, let's space the floor, let's get to the rim, let's shoot threes. And I was like, okay, I know you want the guys to shoot threes, but this guy is like 50% from the mid-range. And coach was like, okay, Daniel, that's a really interesting point. Thank you for that. But for our team concept and what I want us to do is I want us to be super aggressive going to the rim or shooting threes. And I was like, okay, you're the boss.
How did that pan out?
He still shot his mid-ranges and he was never a great three-point shooter. However, within the system of what coach wanted, he was still able to be pretty effective. And at that point, you've got to be like, okay, that's where I'm learning as being a head coach. If you have a style of play, you can either adapt it for a player, or you can get the player to adapt to your style of play while still keeping them effective.
Knowing what you know now, would you have run it differently? If that had been your call.
Would I have run it differently? No. I probably would have done the same thing, because even though he was a 50% mid-range shooter, we had really good three-point shooters, and he was decent going to the rim as well. So instead of having something that's okay, let's go with something that's pretty good, that gives you a higher value, Yeah. So I would still roll that coach's decision.
But again, like another example of that is someone like Kobe, where if you look at his last game in the NBA, I think it was his first 5-6 shots, he just threw up air balls or bricks or whatever. You know, you focus on those stats and go, okay, he needs to sit down. He doesn't score 61 points that night. So it's all taking in content. And I guess sometimes as a coach, you have that gut feeling going, hey, you know what? Let's say Simon Olaniyi-Perkun has a bad day during the game.
Let's not say he has one.
But if he did,
They happen.
and it's a tied game, you're still confident giving him the ball, aren't you?
Yeah.
100%.
It's like, you know, let's go win the game and we'll forget about your off day. So you know, I love that stats thing, and you know, we were trying to feed you that at the start of the Force season this year. In the last season, because we could see how valuable that was. But our challenge was being able to do everything which we just couldn't do. But it turned out to be a silver lining because that led to the in-game sounds.
Yeah, but also trying to match up as well the way that the courts are run and having the stats and recording the right ones at the right time. The ones that are just, I won't say they're not the basic stats, but how many people have got fouls, etc. That's one thing, but we were trying to record how effective they were in certain places and give you that information to take one thing away.
Yeah.
But you can only juggle so many plates, can't you?
And the challenge we had with that was to do the statistical analysis and try to give Dan that information or KP that information for half time and at the end of the game. It was almost a detriment to the entertainment side of things, because I'm now saying a name. I'm also saying a name whilst trying to record an assist, a steal, and 2 points and a foul, and it became too much.
Is there a thing at this level as well? If you had the players, say you had a full team of analysts, all there scoping the game, every game, would there be a point of thinking, oh no, that's putting them giving the players a level of pressure, because they're thinking every shot's being judged, everything's being marked, even though it is at the moment, but it's being judged and recorded, and it adds another layer of that. Because I mean, I know obviously at the top tier, that's what happens.
I think National League from Division 2 up, that's where you get the stats. I think, I could be wrong, but I'm assuming every team has to have a statistician at that point.
Yeah, once you get to level 2, you do. But to answer your question, Mark, before I answer your question, actually, luckily for us this year, we do have a student who's part of the university basketball team, who's volunteering to be a performance analyst for us this year.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
There we go. There's the nugget you were after.
So
They can sit with us if they want to, because we could feed on that.
Yeah.
That is a good thing that we're trying to do. And kind of like what you said, we're trying to start off with the most important and impactful stats in the moment that we think can help us make in-game adjustments to help us win. And then we will do like a complete score sheet and box score, there we go, after the game and whatnot. And now when we're talking about if there was a whole team of analysts, I think that, because sometimes I forget this, but when you're a player, a lot of the time, once you get onto the court, there are like a little bit of nerves of, oh, this person's watching, oh, we've got 2 assistant coaches, oh, there's these guys doing this. But once the ball's gone up and now you've got to defend someone else, you've got to box out and rebound, you've got to come down and execute the set, all of those other things completely go out of your mind. The fact, like, once I start coaching, I forget there's 300-400 people behind me. I only remember at the end of quarters and at halftime. Like, I'll be completely honest with you. That's when I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot you guys were here. But outside of that, you are so locked in because there's so many different things you have to focus on. So I don't think it really crosses the guy's mind.
Cool. I mean, I almost think it's worth, I don't know if it's worth Dan talking to Steve. I was going to say that, but it was one of the guys who came on the show, Steve Ware. We're going to get him back because we started talking about Steve is, was in a IT career, completely stopped his career and got into, the psychology of mental wellness and stuff like that. And, mindfulness, that's his whole career. And he was talking from a basketball perspective to a term called flow. where you get in the flow where you're just concentrating on everything in the game. And I suppose when you're talking about worrying about stats, worrying about the crowd, that kind of thing that someone like Steve could, inject into the team to sort people's heads out, might be valuable.
Yeah, to be able to, exactly what Daniel said there, to be able to turn off and forget that. That's quite difficult, as you said at the beginning, with doing some of the sounds, and you even turn the lights on and off or whatever. But at the beginning, for players, it was a bit disconcerting. But okay, this is my name's being read out, and there's quite a lot of people here. I mean,
it's pressure.
Some of the other games they go to,
nothing like that.
And what size audience are you getting at some of those other games?
You will be lucky to get 50 people.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Thanks, mum and dad sort of scenario.
If that.
The one thing I remember is I went to the Bognor away game, and there were more. I could be wrong, but I felt there were more supporters from Portsmouth to watch the Bognor game than there were Bognor fans. Yeah. And I was sitting there thinking, this is almost like a home game. There's like 30 of us here.
If even fan or regardless, if you are an away team and you're coming into that, doesn't matter where it is. You look at any sport around the world. If you're coming into somewhere that has got an atmosphere, that's tough. That's automatically going, oh.
It definitely does, especially because that is a real home court advantage.
Yeah.
I don't think you guys and the fans really understand how much you help without going to see another game.
The game that reminds me, I think it was the one with Zach where he hit a 3 right at the end, and I think we lost that game in the end. You mentioned the other day, but to just tie it, and the crowd were really getting into it. And what I really realised was that it didn't amp the players up; it actually relaxed them. They kind of sat into it and went, "Yeah, we're home, we're playing, and we're controlling the game. We're playing our game." Mm. And they relax. You think of it as in you're hyping someone up, but actually you don't want someone hyped up because they're making fast decisions rather, without saying what are we doing. But actually, everyone just sort of relaxed into it, and they were much more competent as well as confident, because they weren't overthinking it. They were just running the plays they know and moving the way they were told to move, and
Yeah, and you know what? I am directly speaking to the Portsmouth Force men's players this year when I say, again, every single person in that Ravelin Sports Centre is supporting you and wants you to do well. Forget the mistakes. Forget all that. If you're trying hard, that's all anyone can ask of you. Mm-hmm. And we are 100% behind you. There's no pressure on you guys. Don't worry about any kind of pressure if there is. There's no pressure on that. Everyone just wants you guys to do well.
I think that's something that they are starting to understand. I think this season that we're going into, if we look at the numbers, there'll definitely be a bigger difference in how people perform at home versus away. Because now they know that, okay, I've got a lot of people backing me. I don't have to worry about anything. I'm not going into an unusual or not very friendly environment. I can be relaxed. And it's just, Rob came to come and speak to us at one of our training sessions, and he reiterated exactly what you just said, that as long as we work hard, because the people of Portsmouth will support a hard-working team, then there's nothing else that we can ask for. And it's a good thing, because that's exactly aligned with my thought process, KP's, Jesse's. So we know if we work as hard as we physically can, then the results will be a byproduct of that.
Yeah, and you know what? I agree 100% with what Rob said there. And I think this, maybe it's a Portsmouth trait, that win or lose, okay, we all want to win, but win or lose, as long as you try hard, that's what Portsmouth people want to watch. It's the same thing when you go to Fratton Park. If someone's just running as fast as they can, or doing all the hustling, same on the basketball court, that's all people from Portsmouth want to see. And if they do that, it's like, okay, you win, you lose, okay. But if you try your best, that's all they want to. That's all they would ask for. So yeah. So Dan, going back to your analyst days. So you've been at the Reading Rockets, and you know, definitely one thing we got to talk about is that gave you the opportunity to, you know, work with the Great Britain senior men's team. I mean, what was that? That must have been amazing.
That was a crazy experience. I can't even lie to you. When I was at Reading, I was working with and around AGB coach Alan Keane, and so I was working with him, and he had some connections with the analyst that was working with him when he was with his GB team, a guy called Jamie Smith, and his resume is out of this world. NBA, NCAA College Division 1s, like, so being able to work with him, work under him was absolutely huge. And then when he invited me to come to some of the camps, or the windows with the senior men team, it's like seeing these people in person. People like Ovi Soko, Miles Hessen, Dan Clark, Gabe Olaseni, Andrew Lawrence, like just seeing them in person, seeing that they're actual normal people. Yes, they're huge and they're also very good basketball players, but they are normal people from different parts of the country, will happily sit down and talk with you, will pay attention to any bits and pieces that you're giving them. I say that, I wasn't giving them any pointers, but just being around and helping create that positive environment and making sure things were done when they were wanted to be done, it was a great experience, like great experience.
And I think two things that stand really out there are, one, you were invited. He wanted you to be there. I mean, that speaks volumes, firstly. Yeah, exactly what you said. The amount of experience you get that, or just being around that environment, you know, is just substantial.
I always wondered how people, any professional sport, when you get to a national level and you're playing people who are on rival teams, and then they're playing together nationally against different countries, how difficult that is to coach.
I think the on-court stuff,
Yep.
I don't have the answer for you because I'm not a GB level coach yet, but hopefully moving on to that stage. But the interpersonal stuff,
Yep.
I think is actually really easy to an extent because a lot of the guys grew up together. The good thing that we've got over here is you can have a group of people who get picked up for England under 14s and will play 15s together, GB 16s, 18s, 20s. And it's like they've gone through the whole process together because the basketball community is quite small. Once you're playing at a high level, everyone knows everyone. You're either always playing each other in playoffs, always seeing each other at Final Fours, regionals. So although you may not have played on the same team as them, you've definitely seen them around. You've had some interactions, or they're the best friend of one of your teammates, or they go to the same school as the school that you guys train at. So there's a decent amount of overlap.
Yeah, we said about the Jordan buying Charles Barkley a Rolex when they're in the playoffs, just so that he played him a little bit better.
I think he just said Barkley would ease off him.
Just that 1%.
Even if it was 1%, he's eased off on 1%. But Jordan was, ferocious.
Relentless.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like
any angle to win. Yeah, I get it. But it's just, it's just interesting, isn't it? That dynamic of running plays and learning things and learning people's movements. You go, I'm now in close proximity with people, and to a degree, if they have grown up playing 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s, then seniors, I want to say they know my moves, but to a degree, a lot of people knew Jordan's moves, but they couldn't stop him.
Yeah.
But there is that element of, well, I know he's got it that way and he's waiting, so he's actually waiting himself to flick that way.
Exactly that. And with a lot of our senior men, they actually don't play in the same leagues. Like, we've got some people who are in the BBL, some people who are playing in Turkey, some in Japan, some in Greece, some in France. So they haven't really developed that level of rivalry. It's more when you're in the juniors, when it's like, there's these two teams that keep playing against each other in the Final Four, and now you have to go and be my teammate when we play national team. that's like the biggest point where it's a bit, oh, I don't like you, but we've both made an England team, so we've got to make it work.
So when you have these players, as you're talking about different leagues all around the world, I know we mentioned off air before, but you see the pinnacle in terms of basketball, for like a coaching perspective, in Europe, not necessarily the NBA.
Everyone will see the NBA as the pinnacle, because
Yep.
even some EuroLeague coaches and EuroLeague players will always say, oh yeah, the NBA
As a player.
as a player, the NBA is the highest. Whereas I think if you were to look at actual X's and O's, that the EuroLeague, like your EuroLeague coaches are so clear in terms of you get NBA coaches like Greg Popovich, who will be mentioning that they're copying plays from an Abramovich or some of the EuroLeague coaches. And you also hear from NBA coaches themselves that a lot of the time when you're an NBA coach, it's more so like, yes, guiding, but then also man management, because you have some of the best players in the world, some of the most talented athletes in the world. So you can give them frameworks and whatnot, but they're most likely, like we see a lot, there are actions, but a lot of the NBA is one-on-one or a two-man game, whereas within Europe there's a lot more scoring out of sets. Like, if I could be completely wrong, but I know an MVP, he might have been a EuroLeague MVP that's just gone to the NBA, he was the MVP and all of his scoring was off of the catch.
Wow.
So it's very much a lot of the sets were being run to get him open shots at the rim or shooting threes.
We've seen a lot of the big players, like Joker and Luka, for example, Euro players coming straight into the NBA, making massive impacts because of the way their game and the way they play. They're not super athletic, but the vision and the way they handle things, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
So is the NBA changing as a whole, do you think, adopting more Euroball?
I think so, because everyone's just getting a lot more skilled. I don't want to say who it started with, but most recently you've got people like Draymond Green, who he's smaller, but his skill set means that he can get away with it. Everyone knows Steph Curry made shooting a huge deal. And now we're getting people like Wembanyama, Chet Holmgren, Bol, who are all 7-footers, but are shooting the three like guards, can handle the ball like guards, can be aggressive off the catch like wings. So I think everyone's slowly moving towards, actually, if they're not big, strong, can run fast and jump high, that doesn't mean that they won't be good players. Because if you've got a solid skill set like Luka, then you can get away with it. Maybe he's a bit of a anomaly.
There are anomalies in there for sure. And you wouldn't look at Dirk Nowitzki and say, oh yeah, let's give him the ball and let him hit a three, but you know he would.
Yeah.
But when you mentioned Wemby, someone like that, for example, they're going to get a lot of knocking. He's going to get beaten up big time.
Very much so.
And when you see a player like that as a coach, do you want someone like that bringing the ball up? Like, but people get annoyed when they see Luka bringing the ball up. He's like, he is 6'9". I know he's a big dude, but he can handle it. But as a coach, do you want someone like that bringing the ball up?
I think it's kind of the conversation of, should LeBron always be a point guard? And my thing would be no, because his strength is he is a 6'9" guy.
He's a unit
that has the same skill set as a point guard. So having two people on the court with that skill set is huge.
Yeah.
Or like having Wembanyama, who's a big man who can shoot threes, that is huge, because now the other team's big has to guard him. That takes them out of the key. Whereas if they're like, oh yeah, let's play him as a 3 or as a 4, it takes away what makes him so good.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, so now he's being guarded by someone else who has the exact same skill set as him, but is like 6 inches shorter. And then you'll say, oh yeah, well, just take him into the post. Well, if you're just going to send him into the post, then you might as well just let him play the 5, where his strength is pulling the other big out of the key. And then if he does want to post up, he still has that advantage.
Yeah. It's definitely a change of game.
Yeah.
It's definitely a change of game.
Massively.
You can really pick up on Dan's experience when it comes to analysation.
Yep.
As he's talking as a coach.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, so Dan, just, you've got that analyst experience for GB now, which I actually think is really unique, coming in from that perspective into coaching. So let's now take that step. You becoming a coach. So you've mentioned you were coaching at university.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you were coaching with Reading and some of the regional stuff as well?
Yes. So whilst I was at Reading doing some performance analysis stuff with their Division 1 team and their EABL team, I was also given the reins of coaching their under 18 boys second team. So that was some good experience for me, because that was my first experience of, okay, I've got a team, myself, head coaching it, taking it throughout a season, planning the practices, dealing with players wanting minutes, wanting more minutes. I should be
That's
starting.
a good level as well.
Oh yeah, very much so. But I was surrounded by some really good coaches. Alan Keane, Matt Johnson, Ben Fisher. There was a nice Spanish contingent there as well. So as well as me head coaching my own team, I would be on the bench sometimes for our D1 men's games, or I would be with the under 18 boys or girls Prem team. So luckily for me, I was able to see good coaches working with their players on like a Monday morning, and then implement that in my team sessions on a Monday afternoon. So I was getting to do a lot of trial and error.
I think the word that's just sticking out more and more is just the exposure that you've been around, like with GB, National League Div 1, the women's setup, and then the youth setup. There's just a lot of exposure of different levels of basketball that are just influencing you and your experiences, and then take that forward as a coach.
Definitely that. I could not say I've taught myself everything, because that would be a lie. But something that I do hang my hat on is I'm more than happy, and this is kind of what got me into Reading in the first place. When I was at university, so in my second or third year, I wanted to do more coaching, so I reached out to the people who were running the South Regional program, and I was like, okay, so I'm a student, I have no coaching experience, but I want to get into coaching. Do you mind if I just come along to the 1-2 day camps to just sit down and watch? And they were like, yeah, that's fine, why not? And the head coach who was there is now a head coach for an ACB team in Spain.
Wow.
So I'm very big on go and watch people, because you could pick up, oh, that's something really good that I could copy, or I don't like that, so I'm not going to do that.
I mean, you put the hours in.
Yeah, and understanding strengths and weaknesses.
But it's what the people who hopefully listening with this, who come down to the games, will see you. Okay, he's there coaching live at the game, and maybe at practice. It's like, yeah, there's a whole raft of stuff that you're doing outside of it, and propping up your knowledge and learning more constantly. Like, it's a lot of time that you're putting into that.
Yeah, even like right now, most people don't know this, and I know some of the coaches and the players are probably thinking, why am I doing this? But over the summer, because I'm obsessed with basketball, but I also like to learn, I've been going to watch as many as I can of our under 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s training sessions over the summer. Just go sit down and watch, see what our coaches do, anything that I can pick up, anything that I can help with, see what our players do.
You're scouting future players?
Oh, 100%. Oh, 100%. Some of our under 12s right now, give them 6-7 years. Oh yeah, they're going to be very, very good basketball players.
I think there's quite a few of us coaches that are just looking at those young guys and just, we don't want to wish years of our life away, but I mean,
I do.
I can't wait to see them play.
Yeah,
and also that kind of like when there's a handful of us started working on the fun and fundamentals ages ago, and it was, the aspiration was to get those guys on a Sunday morning to get all the way through on a 12s, 14, 16 to get to playing men's national basketball.
Yeah.
And they're not a million miles away from it now. Those little guys are now under 18s. It
goes back to what we were saying before, though, having that pathway and then constantly going and then being part of something.
Yeah.
They're part of basketball in Portsmouth now.
Yeah.
And it's a whole river that flows up, isn't it?
100%. I love the fact that we've got the whole men's side set up, and what gets me even more excited, and it's just where I've just come from actually, is the fact that we're having a girls team and having that under 14 girls national team, just seeing how many they're getting at their training sessions, it's like, this is what we want. Like, because I know Faye Endine, who was just a Division 1 women's MVP, who's just signed for London Lions BBL team or WBBL team, who are going to be playing in Europe. She's like not too far removed from the Portsmouth area, and just knowing that, okay, we've had one. There was another girl, Anna, I can't remember her last name, where she carried on her basketball career like somewhere else, and she has had some exposure playing for England. It's like, oh, so
the talent's there.
Yeah, we have some of the girls on our doorstep. So once we build this infrastructure, then it's really going to set off. What Jesse and Andy Rowlands are doing is going to be very, very fun in the next couple of years.
Dan, do you realise that where you are sat right now in this studio, Faye's house isn't that far away from where we are sat right now?
Look at that.
I've been
Sounded
in contact.
a bit stalkerish, just throwing it out there.
I just know she lives in Fratton, that's all. But she, we have made contact with her, and when she comes back to Portsmouth, she's going to come on the show.
That would be great.
Yeah, that would be nice to have that full, complete package of, if you are someone who wants to play basketball, there are options.
Yeah.
And obviously, and also there are these idols. I mean, let's face it, that's what Faye is. Yeah, they're idols who
100%.
she was in, girls under 12s, under 14, National League Portsmouth with a pretty good team. And then obviously she turns to Kestrels and ends up MVP of Division 1. NBL.
My daughter came along, drew Simon a picture at one of the games. I believe he still got it. I think
Yes,
he said to
he
you.
still has that picture.
And she said to me, the girls play basketball. And I was like excited, but a little bit sad at the same time, because you go, it's a shame you had to ask that. It should just be there.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's very difficult to see basketball on TV. I mean, we've talked before about growing up in like the 80s, 90s. You only saw basketball if you had to order a videotape, or somehow Channel 4 maybe had something on early mid 90s on it. There was no exposure for it. You had to go out of your way because it's a small community in the UK. Yeah. And it's funny, you think all the communication, all the stuff's out there nowadays, we can talk to anyone around the world, and yet it's still quite an insular thing. So it's not a high cost of entry to come and play basketball. It's time.
And Mark, just focus on something you just said earlier. Are you saying there's potential that Simon Olini-Perkun has inspired a future MVP?
Yeah. Well, she saw how badly you shot the ball and thought I could do better than that. So,
but you know what? I would say these guys, and I don't know if they realise it. We definitely see it from where we're sat. That there are kids that idolise these guys and yourself, and the one that your daughter giving Simon that picture, and that was really sweet. But the one that just makes me smile. There's John McGadgy, big power forward for the Force last year. He high-fived this kid as he came on, walked into court, and the kid just turned around to me and he was looking at his hand like, wow, like Jesus just touched my hand or something like that. And
ow.
He looked at it like,
both.
I am not washing my hand. And he was kind of just holding it, looking at his hand, going back to show his mum or dad or something like that.
But we were those kids when Portsmouth were playing 80s.
We were doing that to Colin Irish and Steve Nelson.
And understand that trajectory. So it's lovely for us seeing Portsmouth having an actual team out there representing, because then there are generations that can hopefully get behind it and move forward on that.
Yeah.
So that ends this episode of the Portsmouth Basketball Podcast. Part 2 of this interview will be coming out in 24 hours, so tune in for that one. But until then, wherever you are and whenever you're listening, we thank you so much for your support. Till then, bye-bye.